Greetings YouTube, Remarkable Republican here once again to bring you the truth with truth-flavored bias. Today I'm announcing the commencement of a new series on this channel. This will be a 4-part series reconsidering Season 8 of Game of Thrones. Why am I doing this, you ask? Stay tuned and find out. The reason that I have chosen to cover only Season 8 of Game of Thrones is because Season 8 is both the most important and the most complicated of the various seasons of Game of Thrones. Since the other seasons are more full, they tend to be easier to analyze, especially for some of the mediocre minds who review things here on YouTube. However, because Season 8 is compressed, it requires you to use your brain to a greater extent than the more full seasons that hold your hand a little bit. And because of that, the pop culture reviewers on YouTube have not done a very good job at covering Season 8 and all of its intricacies. And that is because most of these people just lack the experience and background to think on a higher or deeper level and really comprehend what Season 8 does. Game of Thrones is a cultural milestone, and it deserves to be given a full and comprehensive analysis by someone who is qualified and capable. Season 8 is the linchpin of the entire series. If Season 8 doesn't work, if it doesn't tie together all of the loose ends, if it doesn't bring the story to a successful conclusion, then that negates the value of the previous 7 seasons. However, despite criticisms that people have raised, some of which are valid, Season 8 was a successful ending to the series. Some of the criticisms that have been leveled against it are that it was compressed, which is certainly the case, and that it seemed a little rushed, and that some people's stories perhaps were not quite as full as we might have wanted. But again, all of it boils down to simple compression. If you pay attention to what people have rather than how much they have in terms of their content, what you'll see is that everyone's story is brought to a successful conclusion. Speaking of the failed reviewers of Season 8 of Game of Thrones, the most egregious offenders are also some of the most popular here on YouTube. I'm talking, of course, about EFAP, Every Frame a Pause. EFAP is a leftist pop culture podcast that relies on outrage culture to create clicks. The two main hosts are problematic. Mahler is a guy who fakes a British accent to make himself sound more intelligent, and then he rambles on and on and on. His co-host Rags has a very similar channel in terms of doing reviews, and he self-identifies as a Fury, which is a pagan person who likes to dress up as an animal. And Rags has only ever watched Season 8, so he really doesn't have enough perspective to comment on Game of Thrones as a whole. We have these two hosts, one of whom is uninformed, the other of whom is not nearly as intelligent as he thinks he is, trying to set a tone. And because they are popular here on YouTube and there's a hierarchy among the pop culture YouTubers, their guests feel compelled to bow down to these self-proclaimed alphas and carry water for whatever agenda they happen to be promoting that week. And for a couple weeks in a row, they were promoting an agenda of Game of Thrones Season 8 sucks. So all of their guests were carrying water for that agenda. Both the main host and their guest tend to lack a breadth of knowledge about the world and lack the perspective to analyze something as complex and important as Game of Thrones. Therefore, we need someone who can do better. We need me. My qualifications for pulling this off are, I think, impeccable. I have a business background. I have lived experience of people and of the world. I know how the world works. I know how money works. I know how businesses are run. So when I see something in Game of Thrones, like a brothel operating, I understand the business side of it. I can analyze whether or not it is realistic. Unlike the EFAP host and many other YouTube personalities who are just people who don't really know much and just babble into a camera, I actually do have a college degree from Vanderbilt University. I majored in business, minored in history. My suspicion is that this gives me more formal education than the host of EFAP plus every guest they've ever had. Unlike many of these so-called pop culture experts, I actually do have a wide range of interests that go beyond things produced by HBO. I am a self-taught expert in warfare. I recently concluded a successful series on privatizing the military, where I lay out far more detailed plans for how to do that than, say, Elizabeth Warren has laid out. Even though she's some sort of professor with a bunch of people working for her, my plan has far more detail and is far more plausible. I am a self-taught expert in politics. I keep up very closely. And I also have a strong amateur interest in science, and I have done quite a bit of work to disprove a lot of common myths such as continental drift. Unlike many people here on YouTube who rely on over-the-top statements and absurdity, I lay down fair and balanced criticisms. And that is because I have an even-handed temperament and I treat everyone with respect and fairness. Unlike a lot of people who are pure critics, I actually do have writing aspirations and experience. I'm currently writing a novel, so I understand exactly how difficult it is to build up a story and then bring it to a conclusion. The showrunners for Game of Thrones actually deserve a great deal of credit for the task that they undertook in trying to bring Game of Thrones to a conclusion before the source material from George R.R. Martin was ready. And I think that if we really examine it fairly, they did a fantastic job bringing the show to an end. And perhaps most importantly, there's an issue of character. Unlike EFAP, which refuses to debate me even after besmirching my name on several occasions, I have balls, I have the courage of my convictions, and I possess integrity. I never back down from a challenge. I will debate anyone on any topic at any time. So I am able both to articulate what I think and also to defend it against any and all comers. So that is why I am the person to do this and why I will hopefully be able to inform the entire public about exactly how Game of Thrones Season 8 should be interpreted. Like any good show or story, we need a plan. Here's the plan for this new series. The video you just watched is part 1, the introduction. Next time we'll be taking a look at the Battle of Winterfell. We'll get into the military tactics used. We'll see which parts were realistic, which parts were unrealistic. We'll also explore how it worked as a storytelling mechanism. The video after that, we will look at the Battle of King's Landing, and we will do the same thing that we did with the Battle of Winterfell, with a heavier focus on storytelling since the battle itself isn't terribly intricate. And finally, the grand conclusion of this series, which will really show exactly why Season 8 is actually a brilliant conclusion, we will examine the character arcs for the 16 major characters who appear in Season 8. Without any further ado, let us end this video here. I'm Remarkable Republican, bringing you the truth with truth-flavored bias, and I will be seeing you very soon to talk more about Season 8 of Game of Thrones.